Lighting is fundamental when rendering any 3D scene. Without it, the world simply doesn't exist. The scene data is nothing more than a description of triangles and vertices, and so lighting is the bridge from the virtual to the visual. Currently in the series so far, we've offloaded these lighting responsibilities onto our material shaders. With stylized rendering, we can take more liberties in how we manipulate the interaction of light hitting a surface. Toon shading is a good candidate for our project because it creates clear bands of color which transpose well when quantized. In this episode, I want to cover additional lighting effects. These are processes that contribute to the feeling of the environment, outside of the values our materials return. And the goal of this is to create a scene which feels more lived in and three-dimensional. If you've been enjoying the series so far and want to support my work, subscribing is the best way to help the channel. Thank you, and without further ado, let's get started. Art is difficult, especially for an engineer such as myself. For me, I need a slightly more mechanical process to try and bring these ideas to life, and typically those manifest in three clear stages: reference, interpret, and action. It's about finding inspiration from life or other existing works, looking at how you might filter that through your own perception, and finally turning it into concrete, actionable steps. How that applies to this set of features is that we want to create spaces that more closely resemble nature and how that feels. And so we can look at environments and try to distill what we think is missing. To me, the contrast between areas of light and shade that roll through the scene give a sense of the world being alive. To replicate this, we'll want to look at adding cloud coverage into our pipeline. As is typical with natural patterns, Perlin noise is a good place to start. Just with two parameters, scale and threshold, we're already able to form something that could resemble clouds. If we remember that Perlin noise is just a texture of values ranging between 0 and 1, the threshold allows us to pick a value and clamp any float either side of that to their nearest extreme. Traditional light cookies or projective textures are a common way to handle this type of task. More generally put, light cookies are masks which can filter the output of a light source. An issue in our case is that they're often tied to the light's transform. If the light moves or if the camera rotates, the illusion that our clouds exist physically above the ground will break. To make clouds feel like a physical layer that actually exists above the world, we need a spatial reference in world space. We can start this by defining a virtual ceiling, a mathematical plane at a fixed height. But to figure out where a pixel sits in relation to this ceiling, we have to reconstruct its world position. By sampling the depth texture and running it through the inverse view projection matrix, we can essentially unproject that 2D screen coordinate back into the 3D space it came from. This gives us an in-engine reference for where every pixel on our monitor exists in world space. Now that we have that 3D coordinate, we can treat the sun's direction as a vector. We're looking for the intersection point where a ray, starting at our ground position and pointing toward the sun, hits our cloud plane. The math here is a linear equation where we solve for the distance t along that light vector. Once we have that hit point, we can ignore the vertical height and just use the x and z coordinates as our UVs to read from the Perlin-generated cloud texture. By adding a time-based offset to these UVs, we get a rolling cloud effect. The result is a global shadow mask that we pass directly into our pipeline's shadowcaster. This allows every object in the scene to sample from the mask via default shadow calculations and receive the global cloud coverage. It's worth doing a quick refresher on how Unity and most modern engines actually handle shadows. During the shadow pass, the scene is rendered from the light's point of view, writing depth values to a shadow map texture. When rendering the main camera view, each fragment transforms its world position into light space and compares its depth against the stored shadow map value. If the fragment's depth is greater than the shadow map depth, it's occluded and receives shadow. Looking at this in Unity, the main thing you notice is how it breaks up areas of flat lighting. It creates a more interesting composition of contrasting areas, and overall, it grounds the scene and makes the space feel more livable, for lack of a better word. And because we've integrated this alongside our built-in shadow maps, any object in the scene, whether it's static or dynamic, is able to sample from this global mask. An interesting stylization tweak is to deviate from noise that outputs either cloud or not cloud and look at partial coverage. Instead of blurring the edges of our noise, as that might break the pixel art look, we can apply a stepped banding effect to values within the threshold. This consists of simply rounding the noise to fixed intervals when the Perlin values are read. And we can add some additional parameters in our pixel art settings class to really round out the flexibility of this system. Back over in Unity, clouds now cover the scene with different levels of coverage, and as we adjust the threshold, different regions of banding are able to coalesce. Now that we know the regions that are directly cast upon by the sun, we can start to look at simulating the light to pour down into the scene by looking at volumetric lighting. Shadows are half the story. They tell us where the light doesn't reach the floor. But Godrays are about conveying a sense of the light interacting with the atmosphere. To simulate this, we need to look at the path the light takes through the air between the camera and the object. Some of you may be familiar with the concept of ray marching. We take the vector from our camera to the world position and divide it into a fixed number of steps. At each step, we can query the information at that point, and if we do this for every pixel, we're able to form an understanding of the volume in front of the camera. Now for our process, we deploy this ray marching approach, but at each fixed interval, we do the same upward projection we did for our cloud coverage. And so with each step through the air, we build a representation of the space that has a clear view of the sun. Now typically, to avoid the cost of these such calculations, a card-based approach can be taken to give a convincing approximation. But I wanted to go with a physically grounded method, which utilizes our low-resolution grid. Now you'll see in the engine that this generates beams of light. These are areas of the screen that, when projected back up through the sky, are not occluded by our cloud texture. And unlike our cloud coverage shadows, which is only a projection of the ground via the depth map, this data is representational of the cloud coverage for the space between the ground and the sky. A clear issue with this type of method is noise. When we step through the scene, we need to define how many samples our ray march will process. If we set this to a high number, we'll take a hefty performance hit. If this number is too low, we won't have enough samples to capture the scene coherently. A common approach to hiding these types of flaws is smoothing or blurring. If we sort of mix together neighboring pixels, we can hide some of the sampling issues. It results in a more homogeneous, light flooding result, but it does deviate significantly from the pixel art aesthetic. I'm still uncertain on the best way to go ahead here. I personally have more of an affinity to combining pixel art with modern rendering techniques, but I'm keen to hear what you think, so let me know in the comments. And as always, we've implemented way too many parameters in this episode, but it does give us a lot of control over how each element renders, from changing how the clouds form, how dense they are, and how they move, to aspects of the light transport through the air. We get a lot of flexibility in what we want to create, and I think it succeeds in our goal to add more atmosphere. I hope you enjoyed this installment of Pixel Perfect. If you made it this far in the video, a like and subscribe goes a long way to help out the channel. Let me know what you'd like to see me cover in the next episodes, and I greatly appreciate all the support over on Patreon. I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.